Hello everybody and welcome back to Paranormal Contact. Dave said I got to spice things up a bit. That was my effort. Pretty weak, but you know, at least it's giving you something to smile about today. So what we're going to talk about today, I really wanted to talk to you today about Wiltshire, the county I live in, and it's a really intriguing, mysterious county, Wiltshire. Its origins go back into the mists of time, really. We've got stone circles, we've got ancient burial sites, there's castles, ancient tracks, ancient walkways. It's a really interesting place. And as you know, we love all of that type of thing, all the history that comes along with that, and the possibility of that giving us ghosts or spirits to investigate. So we've spent a lot of time in this county looking around. Myself and Dave, we're both Wiltshire boys, so we know this place pretty well. And what I wanted to talk to you today about specifically was the Ridgeway. So what is the Ridgeway, you might ask yourself? So the Ridgeway is an ancient trackway. Today it's 89 miles long and it runs throughout the county of Wiltshire, and it runs through to Berkshire, and I think it ends up in the Chiltern Hills, if I remember rightly. Time's gone by, it may well have been a longer trackway than that, but that's what's left of it at the moment. The Ridgeway itself is said to be probably 5,000 years old, so it's an extremely old track. It would have been used in the past by drovers. It would have been used as a pathway for traders and people just to travel on, and probably used by invaders to this country as well. So people who would have come to fight would have found these tracks and would have probably used them to gain access into the centres of the island. It's an island we live on, yes. And the thing is, it's up on the upper slopes of the hills, and if you go back, 4,000, 5,000 years, everything in the lowlands would have been wooded and swampland, so it would have been very difficult to travel on. But if you get up onto the hills, onto the chalk downlands, then there's not much in the way of trees and things would have been growing up there, so it was the obvious place to make a trackway to travel along. And there's some interesting stories attached to that as well. The one I specifically want to talk to you about today is a fairly new one on me. I'd not heard this one before. And it's actually a legend of a white cat that's been seen along the Ridgeway. And I've got an actual story that I'm just going to read to you about this white cat. Quite interesting. I hope you enjoy it. So let's get into it. The White Cat of the Ridgeway. The white cat is reputed to follow walkers for miles whilst always keeping its distance. Some have described their encounter as being unnerving. It's almost as if the animal was stalking them. It has been described as a dirty, white, dishevelled, mangy, old cat, and it's about the size of a small dog. Pretty standard for a cat. When approached, the cat becomes unusually hostile, adopting an aggressive stance whilst hissing and spitting at those who dare approach it. Such an encounter with this mysterious feral cat happened to a gentleman a few years back now. Himself and a few friends were out on a hike over the Ridgeway, and this is basically their story. So it was a mid-August evening, a very nice, hot, balmy summer's evening. It's the kind of day when, if you've been walking all day, all you really want to do is find a nice pub and have a nice pint of beer. And that's what these walkers did. They decided that they would meet up at a pub with some friends in or close to the village of Avebury, and with the intention of going out after that and camping under the stars. Well, they all met up as arranged, and they enjoyed a meal and a few drinks, and eventually they set off towards the hills and the campsite. They had found a good spot to camp, and during the evening it was decided that at first light they would all get up together and go mushroom picking along the ridgeway. So sure enough, the following morning, as the dawn chased away the night shadows, they packed up their gear and set out across the mist-shrouded hills. Well, they hadn't got far when one of the party noticed they were being tailed by a particularly large, mangy white cat. They stopped to take a closer look at the wretched creature. Not easy, considering it was partially obscured by the dawn mist. One of the female members of the party attempted to encourage the animal to come a little closer, but it would have none of it and seemed content to keep its distance, some 30 metres or so away from the people. They decided that they would continue on their way and walk on. Excuse me. And as they did, they realised that the cat was following them. And when they stopped, they realised that the cat would stop also. This went on for a mile or so until they came upon a Bronze Age barrow. And to their surprise, as they began to climb the barrow, the cat, which until now had been tailing them, suddenly appeared on top of the barrow, directly in front of them. So the whole party stopped dead in its tracks as the creature arched its back, raised its hackles and hissed and spat at them. Quite how it had managed to get past them and leap onto the barrow without them knowing was later a cause for much debate. The party were startled not just by the animal's sudden aggressive behaviour, but by the way it reacted when they tried to climb a little further onto the barrow, for any such advancement by them was immediately met by more hostile posturing from the cat. So the whole party, now a little wary of the cat, nervously backed away from the menacing looking animal, at which point the cat seemed to become a little less aggressive, although it continued to emit an ominous mewing sound. The slightest attempt to approach the barrow was instantly thwarted by more displays of belligerence. It was decided the best course of action was to leave the animal well alone, so the party slowly headed off into the other direction, turning frequently to check on the cat. None of the party were keen to discover the animal had taken to following them again, and the cat remained on top of the barrow until the line of sight was eventually obscured by a hill. Now, the cat's behaviour at the round barrow was perplexing. Some of Philip's friends thought the animal just plain mad, while others, including Philip, who was one of the gentlemen here in the party, were a little less hasty to dismiss the cat's strange behaviour as simply mad. To this day, some of the party are of the opinion that the cat was warning them to stay off of the barrow for reasons unknown to them. Well, it's well known that spirit animals, usually dogs, but occasionally cats, are thought to guard barrows and dolmens. I wonder, did those people on that walk that day encounter such a creature on that misty August morning as they walked the ancient hills of Wiltshire's Ridgeway in search of mushrooms for their breakfast? Who knows? I hope you enjoyed that little story. Second thing I wanted to do today was talk to you a little bit about another site just down the road here from me. It's a place called Adam's Grave. Again, a very, very interesting old site. This again is on the Ridgeway, and there's quite a lot of folklore around Adam's Grave. So again, I'm just going to read you a couple of articles about Adam's Grave and then some of the folklore that's attached with it. Hope you enjoy this too. One of the most spectacular of Wiltshire's long barrows must surely be the classic Adam's Grave, or Woden's Barrow to give it its Saxon names. It's set high up on the Walker's Hill between Milk Hill and Knap Hill, and Adam's Grave is certainly meant to be seen. This Neolithic barrow measures approximately 60 metres long by 6 metres high, and it's flanked either side by two deep ditches approximately 6 metres wide by 0.9 metres deep. At the southeast end there are two sarsen stones known colloquially as Old Adam and Little Eve. These mark what would have been the entrance to the barrow. The interior burial chambers, there is no access left today, offer evidence of Neolithic limestone drywall construction similar to those at West Kennet Long Barrow, 4 kilometres to the north, close to Silbury Hill. The barrow was opened in 1860 by John Thurman, not to say it wasn't plundered earlier by hill diggers as many were. A noted local archaeologist. 4 incomplete skeletons were discovered and removed, along with a leaf-shaped arrowhead indicative of Neolithic flint working. It's a dramatic construction that would most likely have been the final resting place of some dignitary or the like, and such is its dominance in the local landscape. So some of the folklore that's attached to Adam's Grave. Adam's Grave was thought to be the final resting place of a giant. It is said that if you should run round it 7 times, you will run the risk of waking him and no doubt suffering his wrath. Just the thought of having to run around that huge hill 7 times is enough to put me off, waking any giant. In her book The Ghosts and Legends of Wiltshire Countryside, the late Kathleen Wiltshire, who spent some 40 years collecting stories of local folklore in Wiltshire, recounts a story told to her by a Miss Muriel Cobham. Miss Cobham had an experience on Walker's Hill in the summer of 1965 or 66. She was walking back from the barrow above the White Horse towards the lay-by at the top of the hill, where she had left her car. About 50 yards from the barrow, she suddenly felt very uneasy and glanced around. It was very cloudy and rather cold, and no one else was around. A flock of sheep through which she was passing seemed untroubled, so she carried on her way. Suddenly she could distinctly hear horses' hooves thudding, as if a whole army was coming at full gallop, but there was not a horse to be seen anywhere. Miss Cobham, walking much faster, now admits that she passed Adam's Grave and could hear the hoofs no longer. So, interesting little story. I wonder if Miss Cobham had inadvertently been privy to a ghostly reenactment of one of the 2 battles that took place near the Adam's Grave, both of which are recorded in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles. The first battle that was fought at Woden'sburg, now Adam's Grave, in the year AD 592, and the Chronicle states that there was a great slaughter at Woden's Hill, and Llywelyn, who was king of the Anglo-Saxons Wessex, was driven out. In most versions of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the entry does not record the identity of the force opposing Llywelyn, though it is thought they were most likely British. The second battle, in AD 715, records the entry as follows. Therein and Colered fought at Woden's Hill. Ini was king of Anglo-Saxon Wessex and Ceolred was king of Anglo-Saxon Mercia. The identity of the opposing force is again not recorded. So several Anglo-Saxon battles took place near Adam's Grave and the escarpment of Knapp Hill, and the topography of the area would have been of strategic importance to the Saxons and a prize worthy of conflict, since it lay close to the passage of the Wansdyke where the ancient ridgeway interconnects. The passage was known by the name of Reed Grate or Red Gate or Gap to the Saxons, and it was most likely this gap or passage that they saw fit to defend on occasions at Woden'sburg or Adam's Grave. So, horses giving fright for no apparent reason in the hills near Adam's Grave and along the ridgeway towards Knapp Hill are not uncommon, as the sounds of galloping hooves where there are no horses is a common occurrence there. Tales of eerie encounters with ghostly figures abound, as do reports from folk who say that they have heard the chilling sounds of hounds, thought to be the barrow guardians, and they were baying and howling, echoing across the misty hills at dawn. And standing on top of Adam's grave and gazing down upon the dramatic ancient landscape prompts thoughts of the fearsome battles that are said to have taken place here. The agonising cry of men cut down by the sword and the whinny and snort of terrified horses. Battlefields have long been associated with hauntings, so it is not inconceivable to consider the possibility that as a result of the horrific violence which took place during these battles, an imprint or residue may have been etched into what is the now tranquil landscape. It's a lovely idea that things that have happened in the past can be etched onto the landscape. Isn't that amazing? I really find that quite an interesting concept. It's similar to the way that perhaps buildings and things like that, we can look at those buildings and maybe somehow the stone in the buildings records events that took place there years ago. Anyway, a couple of little stories there. I really hope you've enjoyed them. I hope this has been a little interesting little episode for you. Me and Dave will be out again soon doing some more investigations. Lots coming up for us this winter. It's always a difficult time during the winter because Dave works extra hours in the winter, so us finding time can be a little bit difficult, but we will find it somehow and we'll keep the channel going by hook or by crook. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've all really enjoyed the little stories here today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next videos. So take care all, and bye for now.